How many steps to freedom? The number of posts made by people who see something is terribly wrong with where the West is going is uncountable. Most of us seem to be in shock. The realization the foremost people on the planet could become attacked from so many angles by so many groups so suddenly and in such a coordinated way is unfathomable. What is most confusing is the level of the betrayal. It is not the Islamists that is the problem or those who have gender dysphoria, it is the numbers who fight and protest that these enemies be given a space and a voice on our territory. Less surprising but more worrisome is the numbers of the elite that have proved to be part of this cabal. Much of the disarray the right finds itself in is the difficulty we have knowing who to trust. When those who were thought to be the leaders of one's nation are proved to be conspiring to bring it down and hand it into the hands of invaders, confusion is inevitable. That being said, surely the shock of the depth and extent of the betrayal must have worn off to some extent. We must know we are on our own. Not even the right-leaning political parties can be trusted. Not that all are in bed with the traitors, but they were there, at least their political presence existed, as all of this took place. It must be realized that conservative political parties have never done more than delay this day and will only delay the onset of a Sharia-dominated globalism if relied on. We do not fear or hate Sharia, but we do not want it. In fact, we do not want any legalistic system. We do not want Talmudic law nor the law of the Hindu. We want no law because the law can and will be betrayed by legalists. We do not want anything where someone other than God and the Christian God, at that, sits in judgment over us. But we do not wish to endure reams of commentary on how bad things are. It's time to devise a way out of the mess. The absolutely essential step is to block all liberals and their institutions and prevent them from gaining any access to our territory or groups. There needs to be a show of hands, or a group formed. This is just a preliminary stage. We need a way to communicate, possibly a newsletter. Naturally, we need a rallying sign or idea. There are many, too many in fact, ways of identifying the right. We are called the far right, undesirables, racists, far right nationalists, and so on. The first step is to determine where we wish to go. If we want freedom, what does it look like, and when we look back, what ought we see in the rearview mirror? There is two sorts of freedom. One kind is the liberal version where there are no consequences and no limitations other than what you put on yourself. The other sort of freedom is freedom from the costs of those who do not wish to pay their own way. If we wish the second kind, rather than the first, then we need to seek privacy rights in contrast to public benefits. The best way of doing this is to establish a democratic community. But democracy is subject to the same conditions or qualifications as the rest of the issue is. If we are to experience democracy, it has to fulfill certain conditions. It has to address the problem we face and not add to them. We cannot move to a solution until we understand what the solution looks like. The solution we look for is given as freedom, but we did not discuss what freedom looks like. There was a mention that we wanted freedom of income. We wanted to be free to disperse our income as we saw fit. However, this may be too general. Democracy gives us an additional perspective. Democracy is considered to refer to the power of the people. But this is an inexact and almost meaningless definition. Who are the people? What is this power that is being alluded to? Democratic writes it about power to the people, but power is not given, it is taken. Power resides in the control of property, but the only legitimate power is control over the property that belongs to you, unburned by liabilities. This is the truth the world does not wish to address. Power only comes from unfettered rights, and rights hemmed in by liabilities are conditional, not absolute. But to get these kinds of rights we have to give. Democracy is freedom, meaning freedom from the extortions of those who never earned the right to vote. There is ultimately only one step to freedom. We have to refrain from imposing our costs onto others and require no one impose their costs onto us. But we cannot do this or ensure this as individuals, and if we resort to the legalities of the state, we have compromised our entire premise. The resolution to this dilemma is the church, because it is in the church that the first step is taken. One can argue about why the church, but the fact is that the church is that institution that is formed when people take the first step, which is said, is divesting oneself of the means to impose costs onto others, and which expose your income to the expropriations of others. In other words, if you are not exposing your income to expropriation and you are divesting yourself of all means to externalize costs, you will have created a church. That is the logic of the situation. There is, then, one step to freedom from corruption and evil, and that is the church. In other words, the Christian to be free must learn to live in faith. But this is not a faith in God whilst we store up property against a rainy day. We have to live in faith, which is a relationship of trust. But once more, if we are to live in faith, we must be assured no one is going to expropriate what we have, as they must be assured we are not going to impose costs onto them. In many ways, we ought to think of democracy as a meritocracy, in that the people who have the power are the people who have income. Those who have income have value or merit. This is contrasted with those who have property but also have liabilities, because it is impossible to have property without incurring liabilities. If you have liabilities, you are not free. So, that first step is all about identifying liabilities, both your own and others, and the biggest of these is the state. The state is an institutionalized liability that operates to expand and legitimize liabilities. This is so it can keep its hand in our collective pocket. To eliminate liabilities and privatize income, we need to divest ourselves of everything with attached liabilities. These things are allocated to the church, which operates as a trust. But the real key to having freedom is to not give away the exercise of freedom, which is ultimately tied to income. This may not be philosophically elegant or academically impressive, but the bottom line is someone has to earn what is spent. If you want a house, someone has to build it first. This is the truth no socialist really wants to address. In the end, these do-gooders all stand around waiting for a virtuous person to build something so they can take it and give it to someone else. True, they usually do this indirectly, by means of taxation, but the result is the same: inflation. Everything costs more because the things being produced are being shared among too many people. Were there no exploitation, there would be no inflation. We have a right to work, and we have a right to be paid, and any curtailment of that right is an infringement of our privacy and democratic as well as our human rights. We have a right to work, and we have a right to be paid. Without these rights, there are no rights. All other rights, especially those given by the state, are legal rights, and do not constitute genuine rights. Any right given to us under the law can, under the law, be removed. The first step, then, is not the only step, it is a gigantic, all-encompassing step. We actually have to separate from the state and its law. We need to come out from under the law. But we are legalists, not anarchists. Anarchists only want to do away with the state. They feel order will arise naturally. It may happen, but there is always the threat posed by a strong minority. Democracy does not do away with power, it puts power in the hands or the earner. The power of the people has to be attached to the power of the wage earner, because anything else requires the lawmaking power of the state, and that will return us to Babylon. To privatize the state and the political and economic institutions requires a divestment of liabilities, that is, property controlled by means of a state license. This is basically commercial property. This is invested in an institution called the church. This church holds these assets in trust and credits the investor with a credit to the investor's account with the trust. The person who invests or deposits $5,000 worth of property is credited 5,000.00 units of account, called prefers. Prefers are not assets and have no value, they only represent the value of the income the investor has earned. This eliminates liabilities, and it eliminates the need for the state and its ability to prosecute law. Thus, the one step once taken, get us to where we wish to go. We are free of the state, free of liabilities and the law. We are free to work and earn income without let or hindrance. We are free of all externalities and social costs as listed above. And that is about as free as anyone can expect to be.